kick off here. I'm very excited for our guest today. I met Josh because a lot of the clients that I work with, software companies, companies selling professional services, one thing that they always complain about is how hard it is to find good SDRs and BDRs, and the process of onboarding them and all this stuff. So Prehired is a partner, and I met them because I recommend them to our clients, and they've been really happy with them. And Josh, today, what we're going to talk about is how to hire, onboard, and lead a killer SDR team. So Josh is the founder of Prehired, where they place science-based sales development reps to fill your team's calendar. So one of the things that's really cool is they've placed reps at some really big companies like Google, Zoom, Wistia, and many more. But Josh, I'm super excited to have you today, man.
Oh yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Jason.
So let's kind of start with a bang here. What, from a hiring standpoint, what do you see companies kind of messing up when it comes to who they decide to hire from like a selection standpoint, from like a candidate profile standpoint? What are some of the things that you're seeing out there?
Okay, so this topic, we don't have enough time to go into just that one question today, but I will give some maybe broad strokes of what I see happening in the marketplace.
Sure.
It all starts with the application process. So many companies today are still uh, having an application process where you don't really get to truly see if someone is a fit for the role that you have. Um, it's there just to disqualify people to maybe help HR or the manager get through enough resumes to maybe find the right person. And so in doing so, though, they miss out on some really great talent because they're doing things that worked maybe 20 or 30 years ago. And this is the thing that's
Oh, wow.
crazy to me is like
Yeah.
the university system in America hasn't changed for hundreds of years. It's like the lecture based model. It's like, I don't even get into the history of like when we needed people to work in factories. And so it was just train them to do exactly what we say. Don't think outside the box. Don't think on your own, but think like everyone else. And we're not in that world anymore with the way that the internet drives the everything that we do. So it's amazing to me that like universities education hasn't changed. And so that actually, and the reason I mentioned that is because that's one of the things that affect our mindsets and belief systems on how we should do our jobs and how we should hire. And so all these things we're not even questioning that we've just been told to do since we've started in the workplace. Once we got out of college, we just started doing something a certain way because our manager, who is from a previous generation who had more experience than us, told us to do it a certain way. And what works then doesn't always, it never works normally now or in the future. Like at some point you have to change. So that's where it starts, but that leads into, okay, then how are we going to qualify, how are we going to get in our people into this company and hire them? It starts in the application process. They're beginning to say things like you go into an application process and you've got a job offering. Let's say you're trying to get an SDR hired. Let's just say first it's an SDR and account executive. No, let's stick with SDR, entry level role, right? Like for everyone that doesn't know, for that's here, sales development rep, anything like that. That's typically more of an entry level role until you get until you go up senior SDR, maybe team leader, whatever. And the thing that's fascinating is that they'll require bachelor's degrees. That's the
Yeah.
first thing I'll say is like, why in the world are we requiring degrees for this role? This is not like a college degree does not indicate you're going to be a successful person
Hey,
really
let's
at
let's
anything.
let's do a quick ask. Actually, in the chat, you guys let me know. Do you guys require college degrees when you hire SDRs, BDRs? Give me a yes or a no. And by the way, if you guys select panelists and attendees, everyone can see the chat. Otherwise, it's just me and Josh that can see it. Yeah, a lot of no's, few yeses. For
Yeah, I
those of
see
you
some
that said
yeses, nos.
yes, I'd love to hear like why. What is the thinking behind the college degree? Yeah, because a few people. Yeah, for those of you that answered yes, what's the thinking behind why you require a college degree for the SDR position? We
And
won't
maybe
pick
not,
on
yeah,
you, I swear.
then maybe not like a bachelor's degree, but any degree. Like, why would you require any degree for a sales position?
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious what you guys have to say around this, and we can have a healthy debate.
Oh yeah, like my opinion is just an opinion. I could change my mind tomorrow, and I could be wrong today, right? That's why I love dialogue.
Yeah. So John says shows discipline. And by the way, I see a few of you using the Q&A button. If you have a specific question you want to talk about when it comes to hiring, onboarding, leading, that sort of stuff, please use the Q&A button here in Zoom so that we can get to it. So Josh, John says shows discipline.
Mm,
Dinesh, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly there. HR, kind of has this setup. Yeah, Eric
mhm.
says the same thing. Discipline. It's a requirement, Haley said. Methods to organizing, Eric says. So what do you think, Josh, in terms of the discipline thing? Any commentary there?
Yeah. So discipline. I would agree that someone that is going to be in an SDR role, you've got to be disciplined. So if the few people that I see saying discipline, organization, things like that, absolutely agree 110%. You've got to be disciplined to be an SDR. However, let me ask this question to everyone that is thinking that. It's like, is it fair to say that the only way to show discipline is that someone had went into debt probably for 30 to 50 to $100,000 to get a degree that was not really useful beyond showing discipline? Is there other ways to show discipline? Like
Yeah.
that's my point to make on that.
I don't have a college degree, by the way. So
There we go.
I wouldn't be able to be hired at a lot of these companies, which is kind of funny. Um,
Yep. It is. And so I would just yeah, like definitely like discipline is a okay, college degree can be a indicator of discipline. Here's an example, Jason. You said you didn't graduate. I did, but I was an awful student. Like I was like I hated going to class. I hated like reading things I wasn't interested in. But when I found something I was interested in, I kind of put effort into it. I did well at it. But like I was actually not actually I was the most undisciplined probably person out of my cohort of friends in college. But later I was able to learn discipline through other areas. So just like I went to college and I was very undisciplined. I had to actually get trained by my first mentor to get the discipline, who took a chance on me because he saw all the other things that I had. But I had the college degree, but not the discipline. And actually, for a while, like that was a weakness of mine that actually held me back as a salesperson until my mentor helped me overcome that. So college didn't teach me discipline. It taught me partying, like meeting people I wanted to date. I mean, let's be real. Like that was like for me, college was this place where you could go and have all the privileges of an adult, but no responsibilities of adult life. That's
yeah.
to me what college was. And I feel like a lot of people back then when I went to it, which is way back then, I don't want to say the year, but like I feel like that's what it was for a lot of people. Now, I also want to say, like, because I don't want people to walk away thinking Josh is hating on colleges, because that's not the case. It is right for some people. But for
Yeah.
salespeople, like, should that be a requirement for all SDRs, which I see a lot of companies do, especially the bigger they get? Now, the good thing is Google, Facebook, IBM, even the US government has rolled back the requirement for degrees, like college degrees, to do a lot of roles. So I think that's progress. But it seems like the mid market and even a lot of some of the bigger companies still hasn't followed suit with some of these big movers yet. And I'm
Yeah.
hoping that maybe this conversation and people talking about this stuff helps move that along. But anyways, that I don't want to stay too long on this topic, but that is one thing that yes, you're missing on talent because I see the chat. You're missing out on opportunities and people that are incredible just because they don't have a college degree.
So we got one question and then I got another question for you, but Steven asks, they make it optional. And do you think that might scare away people that don't have a degree by saying that it's optional? Or should you
I
be pretty
think
clear
saying that
cut?
it's
Is it required or isn't?
I think that if you want to mention it and say it's optional, that's great. I don't think it will scare anyone. Because I'm thinking about all the thousands of people that we've helped and the feedback from my staff on working with salespeople specifically. So remember, this is through the lens of the salesperson and role. Um, no, I don't think it's going to scare them away. And if it does, they're probably not ready yet to be in sales if they're brand new to the game, so or brand new to the career. Um, so yeah, I wouldn't say scare away, but I would also say why put it at all? Like if it's optional, there's not really a reason to list it. In fact, it shows that you're more of a forward thinker, in my opinion. And I don't like and I think and here's the thing is if we don't all like I really do believe that a lot of these things we're discussing, like that aren't mainstream, some of them may be mainstream, but not yet. I think that anyone starts to think this way and just says, if it's optional, why even have it? Especially if it's not an
Yeah.
indicator that it's going to be successful. Let's get rid of it. That's just going to show your company and your department and your team doesn't care about accolades and things that are like old ways of maybe of doing things. Like it's not about who you know, it's how well you do. So it's about performance in sales, right? So that just echoes like, hey, we don't care about this requirement because we just want to see that you can do a good job. I think so. Again, optional is fine. It's not scaring them away, but if you can, just let's think about taking it away, like not even putting on
Yeah.
the application.
What are one or two other things that you might look for on a resume that would be indicators of discipline? Maybe stuff that's a little, not necessarily uncommon, but a little less intuitive.
So I love how on resumes and in interviews, first stage interviews, normally second stage, people, whenever someone says describe yourself or talk about yourself or what are your good qualities, whatever, it always on paper in the first conversation, it always says that people like to say I'm detail oriented. I'm a detail oriented person. It just comes up on resumes a lot, especially in the
Yeah.
sales world, I think. And the funny thing is, Just because you say you're detail oriented does not mean you're in fact that or disciplined or anything that's maybe that adjacent to that definition of what that is. And the thing that you can do though in your resume, if you truly are detail oriented, you better not have one grammatical error on your resume. Because if you're claiming to be something that you're like, that's one thing right away. If someone, because this happens a lot on resumes, detail orientation, or they say things that like high level of detail or high level of like organization or whatever. If you ever see that and they're not showing that in their resume or in their email, what have they done to apply for the job? For me, they're not ready yet, but I'm not saying that that may not be trainable. But the thing is, behaviors and mindsets can be some of the most difficult things to change. Knowledge and people that are coachable, I won't get too deep into this because we'll probably talk about that later. That's easier to change. So I'm looking for things that like are not showstoppers. So yeah, look for the resume, look to see, do they have a good resume? Do they know, like, for example, in the sales run, I'll end on this for the resume. If they want to show discipline, I'm just trying to think outside of organization, because that's the first step. When you have a phone call with someone, you can really start to dive into that. But I would just say
Yeah.
off the top of my head, it's just any communication received prior to the meeting, just see is that organized or not? How's their thinking and the way they wrote the resumes, their grammatical errors? That's probably a good indicator that they're disciplined. But I will say, I got to say this too, is I've seen people that have issues with that, and Grammarly is able to fix those things and they become a great salesperson. So in fact, I think one of my directors at Prehired actually has told me that I use Grammarly my entire sales career. And if I didn't have it, I would never have been able to be in sales because I'm a bad writer, but he's a good communicator when it comes to spoken communication.
Yeah.
So that's my answer. It's I guess everyone wants a secret weapon or like, oh, this is the rule I can apply to resumes. And I'm like, how are you going to show discipline on a resume? It's very hard to do that, but that's one idea.
I love that. And I just dropped Grammarly in the chat, you guys. I would be lost without Grammarly, so I would check that out. But there's a couple other just things that people have commented on. Jessica, hey Jessica. She says, I've hired so many people without degrees who have had amazing success in sales. Often the highly educated ones were too much on their heads to connect with customers. John mentioned something about hiring athletes. Is there anything to that for you guys that you think about? Sports, anything like that? Because that's kind of like if I looked at a lot of sales teams, I would say a lot of them, it looks like from a hiring standpoint, prioritize these A type, all
Mm-hmm.
American type of men and women that played sports and that sort of thing. And I think there's something to that, but I'm curious from your
Yeah.
standpoint, is that even something you think about?
Yeah. Like, you know what? Here's the thing. I love the ideas of like, because to a certain degree, like that is accurate to a certain extent. For example, if they were a triathlete or if they were like a swimmer, as I see here, or they played a certain like sport and they chose to list it on their resume, which again, though, not everyone does this. And this is, it just depends. Well, that if they do though, that's a good indicator that they have empathy and they understand maybe what the sales manager's thinking because they're trying to sell themselves to the company through a piece of paper. So if they do put these things on their piece of paper, they're probably worth considering a little longer than someone who doesn't. Because yeah, if they put that they're a swimmer, that they were they were in the military, any of these things that they played sports competitively, that are indicators of discipline. But also, here's the thing: is time after time passes, people change with time. We're always changing for the better or for the worse. So the
Yeah.
thing that I found though is it doesn't matter what their background was related to those previous positions or previous hobbies that show discipline. If a lot of time has passed, because I've met someone who literally is every category, played a sport, did like triathlons, and even previous military that are now getting civilian jobs. And because so much time had passed, they're no longer disciplined. Now, again, that's not the case for everyone, but I guess I want this. What I'm leaving the theme with this is in resumes is like don't try to disqualify two people too soon from a piece of paper based on things that are really hard to quantify on a piece of paper. Like there are indicators, and if you're getting thousands and thousands of applicants for one position, then okay, I understand why you need to do that and just get people off your plate. But you're missing out on great people, and these other companies that aren't doing that are going to get them because I see this all the time. Like I see some, I'm not going to name the names, but I see some really big giants miss out on a couple of our people, and then another mid-market leader who's rising up or like just IPO'd or something like that grab up a handful of our members, and they were passed on because of some weird requirement early in the application process. And I'm like, whoa, like, this is, and that's what's going to make these companies competitive in the future. So think, sales managers, if you're listening to me, I know you're thinking quarterly, you're thinking monthly and quarterly. Like that's your role. If you're a VP, maybe you're thinking quarterly and yearly. But companies, like I'm always thinking like what's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years in the industry. And I'm telling you, these are the things you can be thinking of how to just get a little more competitive edge over the competition, because your people are your company at the end of the day. Like who you have representing your company is going to make you successful, or it's going to make you fail.
Yeah. Can you, if we zoom out a little bit, and great questions, everyone. I love the interaction here, and we'll get to a lot of the stuff that you're mentioning. But when we're looking at the hiring process, could you zoom out a little bit and step back and give us an idea of the contrast between like a lot of the folks that you place that do really well versus the stuff that a typical, large SDR organization might hire? Because I've seen some of these folks, and there's a very big contrast in terms of their resume, the amount of experience they have, and then how they end up performing versus some of the more traditional people. Can you give people an idea, like what does the contrast look like between some of the folks that you guys place versus
Between them and then
kind of
what am I comparing them
stereotypical?
to?
Yeah, so like if you think about the stereotypical SDR hire that a large company might, have versus someone that you guys place,
Yep.
there's some pretty big differences, at least from my point of view when I see it, just to share with people kind of the contrast
Yeah.
in the candidate that you're looking for. I think this will give everyone some good context into the questions.
So, yeah, this could be a very interesting topic to go into. So, what's some differences? Well, I'll go ahead and say that, for example, with Prehired, we help people that are transitioning in careers a lot of times. Like they want to go from some other background. Some of the times it's sales, sometimes it's not, and they want to get into the tech field in sales. And so their background is often different than maybe the traditional background that a sales manager at a tech company, because we traditionally work in the tech field. So they're looking for someone. This is what it's kind of funny. Someone they're looking for someone with a bachelor. So let's go further. They're looking for someone maybe a bachelor's degree or some sort of degree. They're also looking for 2 years of experience, but it's a entry level role on the piece of paper. A lot of it's mind boggling. It's like, so it's kind of like you're kind of like you can't ever get in, because it's like I'm required to have 2 years of experience to get in, but this is an entry level job, so you never. It's like, this is ridiculous. It's like it doesn't even make sense. And when I see that, I'm just like, whoever's doing this is making really bad decisions. So that's what they're looking for, and that's what they're interviewing. They're looking for people with experience. And what's crazy is we have on record sales managers saying that I prefer a sales person from Prehired over someone that has 2 years of tech sales experience, because it's pretty much a little like equivalent to that. Like, and they're like, they actually come in on the top of the leaderboards from the day they start. Now, this doesn't happen every time. I don't know. That's anecdotal, right? But these are the things that I hear compared to other folks. So, and the reason why, because I know this is where we're going, is like, what would make those two people different? And it goes back to past experience does not equal future successes. Like if they have past successes in their experience, that does not mean they're going to be good at the next place they go to. Because here's the thing, you have to evaluate all the variables that could contribute to a salesperson's success. So salespeople, if you're listening to me, if you're type A like myself, if you haven't realized in the disc profile, I'm highly dominant, highly influenced. Like a lot of salespeople have dominant or influence in their personality styles. So if you're listening to me, we have egos. We love to feel valued. We love to have, we love to win. Like there's a lot of things that drive us to do what we do, but we need to be real. Let's be real, right? We aren't the only reason we're successful at our jobs. The software stacks that we use and tools and how we use them play a role. Our mentors in that company play a large role in helping us understand how it's different from previous experiences we have. Like the skills we have, like we apply that, but time management, discipline, organization, all those things change from company to company based on the environment. So like the biggest thing that you should be looking for, and this is the biggest thing that I see hiring people maybe from us, and if they're following an old school pattern of hiring people, is they're hiring based on who someone is now, not who they were back then. That's the one thing that I want to like think about, is like experience does matter, but if you should meet with people, you should have conversations, interviews with people, even if they don't have the experience, because it's an entry level role. And you know what? Even whenever someone doesn't have the experience you're looking for in the next level, say it's an account executive or something like that, if they're just a little bit short of the experience, but everything else checks out, you should meet with them, because you can't really get a good feel with them unless you meet with them. Now, that's where technology comes in, using videos and things like that. Having someone send in like maybe a video, YouTube video or something like that to actually show you and answer a question for you, like answer some things that you would be able to ask them in the first part of the interview. So manager, I'm trying to give you some tips on how to manage your time well. If that's like too much, because you have too much volume, you could put in your interview process, like submit a link with a video that answers these questions that we're looking for that we think are good indicators to see if they are disciplined, they have organization. But Jason, we haven't even brought it up, but that's like those aren't even like the most important things I think for a salesperson. Like I think we started talking about, because that was coming up about like that's why they're hiring for the bachelors, but there's other things that actually are also really important when hiring that you should be looking for. And that's, I think, what some of our reps identify. But I'm gonna turn back to you because I don't want to go off in one tangent. I think there's a lot of stuff we're going to cover.
No, this is all really good stuff, man. There's a couple things that people asked about I want to comment on. And so Breezy Beaumont says, hey, you might be swaying your hires towards men versus women if you go based on sports. And this is kind of a part of a bigger theme that I think is really important, in that the best sales development teams I have seen are the ones that are very balanced across gender, race, all that kind of stuff. It's a very diverse group of folks. How would you recommend a company, an employer, make sure that their entire process is not turning away women or minorities or anything like that that would be a really great fit for their team? Is there anything that you should maybe think about or be conscious of when you're trying to create a diverse team, race-wise, gender-wise, that sort of stuff?
Yes. So there is no perfect answer to this because this is a hot topic politically, in the economy. Like it's everywhere, and so everyone's trying to solve this and do their best to solve it. The one thing that I've seen from what we do for the last several years now and helping people transition careers from all backgrounds, we're talking about like in fact, the majority of people that come through Prehired are minorities. Just think
Yeah.
about it for a second. So the majority of Prehired members are basically not white males like myself. 70% of them are not a white male. So that means they could be, different, they could be female, different gender, they could be different skin color. But here's what I want to here's what I want to leave today, because this is going to rub a lot of people maybe the wrong way. But I'm going to just be real. This is what I really believe we need to do. We need to hire based on actual ability and performance, character
Yeah.
and competence. I'll talk about that later, because diversity is not monopolized by skin color or by gender. And this is the thing that I can't believe America is so obsessed, because you go outside of America. Like I lived in Japan for 5 years. I was the minority. I experienced intense racism, and I've kind of got a different view. America's still different. I've got a different view of what that's like. But the thing is, we get so wrapped up in media talking about like diversity is based on just skin color. It's not. That is something that should show a healthy workplace, because your company should be a reflection of our country. So we have a mixture of lots of backgrounds, lots of races, lots of genders, lots of religions, right? So that should be a representation of your company in some form or fashion. If you find yourself not being that, because I can speak to this from previous companies that I've been a part of, when it was more predominantly white, it wasn't intentional. It probably was an older company that started off with some older white guys who then just knew some older white guys that they could hire quickly, and then it just maybe they knew more and more. Because the fact is, a lot of people tend to group in cliques that are based on backgrounds, based on upbringing, based on culture, right? And so I just wanted to say it's not like intentional. That's what I see in the workplace, in the environment right now. But they also should try to correct it. And I can tell you that it's not easy to do, but I've seen it happen. So the way to do it is like to say, and again, this is not a rule for anyone to follow. This is just things I'm considering. Is like maybe they do want to be more diverse. They want more women in the workforce or their company, or they want to say we've got too many white folks in the company. We want to bring in some Black Americans. We want to bring in some brown Americans there. We want to bring in whatever diversity you're looking for. Because I'm trying to talk now to the hot topic, which is the skin color and the genders, which is everything it's been politicized like crazy. But if you're looking to get that, because here's the reason why diversity, I want to say this. Diversity for diversity's sake is just bullshit. I don't know if I can say bullshit, but I said it. Diversity has a purpose, and it's to expose other ways of thinking to each other and to make us all grow better. Like we want to be better by being together. So when you get exposed, it's not about skin color again or gender. It's about upbringing, culture, mindsets are shared with other people, and then that represents America, and that's how you win in the country. If you have people that think like other people that you're selling to, that is how you win in a company. So like that's the reason why diversity is important. It's not to make check up like for politics though. It's to like get someone in and say, oh, we have these numbers, blah, blah, blah. It's, oh my gosh, that makes me so sick. Diversity for diversity's sake is hypocritical and it's unhelpful. But when you have a purpose behind it, diversity is powerful. So I'll leave it at that. I don't want to over talk because
Yeah.
but I'm very passionate about this because I believe in people like should be evaluated on performance and not on other stuff.
Yeah, no, I love this because it's actually really hurtful to minorities and the people of color and the women in sales, whatever it is. It's very
Yep.
hurtful to them when they're a hire that was just to fill like a number for your
Right.
diversity requirement. That's like a really fucked up way to like
Yeah.
bring someone into your organization. I think the big thing here is like just make sure that what you're doing is not a detractor for people
Yeah.
that are different. Make sure it doesn't repel people that are different.
Yes.
Um, Dude, I love your take on that, man. We've got a couple other questions too. Just when it comes to the application process and the sourcing, Oliver asks, "What do you think of aptitude tests?" And maybe kind of throw in there, is there any kind of testing, personality test? Is there any validity to that? You know, what? How do you think of the testing?
Okay, so that is an excellent question because a lot of companies use them for salespeople, and we've actually had a lot of our members go and use these. Yeah, they have to do these aptitude tests, and we've also personally, I've used like half a dozen different like aptitude tests. Some are specialized towards sales only. Some are like more generalized.
Mhm.
Um, and I can say that, man, I do not mean anything against these companies because I know there is a place for it, but it is a hit and miss. It
Yeah.
is completely a hit and miss with sales. I've seen it be accurate and it did accurately depict who that person was and could they do their job or not. And I've seen these tests and I'm never going to name these companies that I could think of that are use them. And they're like, the sales managers are like, we want to stop these aptitude tests as fast as possible because even though they come highly recommended, like we're losing people to the competitors or to these other great companies that don't require them. But at the same time, you do want to have like, here's the whole purpose of aptitude tests. You just don't want to waste your time dealing with someone that is not a good fit. Let's be real here. Everything we're doing around disqualify, because we're disqualifying people in our funnel, right? Sales managers, it's your sales funnel for your hires. So you're trying to disqualify, and I get it. I'm on your side. I want you to save your time for the things that are important because you're doing so many different things a lot of times, including hiring sometimes and including training and onboarding and like still managing the team, all that. So I get the desire to try to weed out people is like using technology because that's the whole point of technology is make our lives better to be more efficient. But I'm saying that it doesn't work that well, especially hear me out on this for junior level roles. Like maybe there's some specialized tests you can take for an engineer or for something that's more senior level that could work to weed out can they do this job or not. But it is a hit or miss. Sometimes it's accurate, sometimes it's not, and I'll just leave it as that. So if you want to use them, I think it's great to use as a part of like, what does this say? But I've seen those used to screen out people from ever talking to a human. And I know the intent, but if you do that, I guarantee you the other people and the other companies that aren't doing that eventually are going to surpass you in terms of human capital potential. They're going to get the better people that you pass on.
Yeah, there's a really good documentary on this actually. Oh, I think it might be Persona, The Dark Truth Behind Personality Tests on Netflix. But they actually go into like this exact thing that you're talking about where companies are filtering out people from even getting opportunities, and there's certain
Mhm.
people that happen to have these personality types that just will never get an interview. And the thing that I've always seen in my first job as a sales manager was at this company, this house painting company, right? They hire college students to teach them to run house painting companies and all this other stuff, and they hire 3,000 candidates a year. And they really looked at personality testing, and we really tried it across thousands of hires, and they found no correlation in the people that do really well and their personality. But I think the personality test where it does play a factor is managing and leading that person. It can
Mm,
really help if you know their personality and what they might respond to and how to talk to them.
yes, absolutely.
But yeah, I haven't seen any correlation in personality tests either. Great question, you guys. And by the way, you guys, I see a few of you asking questions in the chat. Make sure to throw them in the Q&A section so that we don't miss them. So Steven, you just asked the question. If you could put that in the Q&A, that would be great. Let's move to the kind of interviewing portion of this, Josh. So we talked about application process, sourcing, how to kind of weed out people. There's some things that you look for that are maybe non-traditional in terms of they don't have to have a lot of sales experience. A lot of them you're hiring come from sometimes blue collar type stuff. Maybe they have some call center experience, but you're really looking more on the personality side of things. And one of the things that you said is, I'm really looking more for behaviors and mindsets.
Mm.
So you have some stuff here that you think about. How do you measure someone's behaviors and mindsets, and why do you prioritize that over maybe the hard skills that they might have?
Because that's a good question. So, okay, the hard skills for sales are not hard to acquire. It's not like I hate this old phrase, but it's not like rocket science. Like you can teach these hard skills within a certain amount of time that's reasonable to get someone started in sales, especially when it's entry level roles. Um, the the thing about that's one thing about the hard skills. Now, the reason why I like to look at behaviors and mindsets and take a look at that first is because that, on the other hand, is a lot of times ingrained into that person's way of thinking. Mindsets and behaviors are a lot harder to change. So mindset, and just so everyone understands where I'm coming from, I define that as it's a collection of attitudes or a settled way of thinking about a certain topic or a certain point of like certain thing or something or someone. So and if I can't if I first of all I need to see what is their mindset towards like sales, towards failure, towards rejection, towards grit, ambition, all the things that we're looking for. And if it's off, I want to see like, is that a mindset or did they just answer the question wrong? Right? Think like some like for example, I change my opinion occasionally when I talk to people a lot smarter than me, all which is all the time, pretty much every time. And then they share new information with me, and I'm like, oh crap, like I didn't know that. So my opinion has been changed to like what you believe because you were like, wow, that was amazing. So just because they said something wrong in one question or one answer on a piece of paper in person does not mean that's a mindset. That just means they might have. So I want to dig deeper. And what do we do with salespeople? We dig deeper whenever someone says something weird, right? How many times are we in a sales call and we're talking to a potential like buyer, and we know how the demo goes, or we know how the qualification call goes, and then they say something that you're like, where do I go from here? How many of you have ever been like, I don't know where to go from here, or where was I? It's because they just said something weird that's not normal. That should be like a red flag, and you should be like, if a good salesperson be like, that's not fucking normal. Like, like why did they say that? Let's dive deeper. Hey, when you said that, like, this is expensive, compared to what? Because I don't get that a lot. Like, without being, don't have an attitude. But anyways, that's what we should do whenever you see something that might come up in the questions you ask related to like this mindset thing. So if they don't show that they have a good mindset or healthy mindset towards rejection, dive into that. See, like, hey, make sure it's not just a surface level thing. So for example, if they say, tell me the time you've been rejected, because this is happening a lot. Tell me the time that you've had to face rejection and that you've overcome or something like that, and they share a story. Don't just let the story be and just like have an opinion based on exactly what they said. Lead them, because sometimes you need to lead them like to say, okay, we'll expand on that. Tell me more about that, because they can't read your mind. And you know what? Let's remember, these people are nervous. You're a manager. You're in a position of power. These people are looking for jobs. Like they're a little bit nervous, so they may not act like their normal selves when they're meeting you. They're going to try to, but so like cut them a little slack with these weird questions, because remember, you're asking them questions about their personal lives, which sometimes is just a little bit weird to talk about compared to selling a product. So that's another thing we need to think of when we're interviewing people. But that's what I would say about as far as like, so again, hard skills can be trained to a certain extent, and you can ask questions on that too, which is, by the way, you need to ask questions on that because you need to understand how much do I need to actually train them on doing selling though? I'm like, actually, do you know how to qualify? Do you know like what the elements of a qualification call are? Do you know like, what to say? Like, give me an example, like you need to see where they're at so you can know, okay, if I hire this person based on competence of the job as of right now. This is the level that I've got to train them. And the other applicant is like at this level. You need to measure that. What gets measured gets mastered. I'll pause right there and say that. What gets measured gets mastered. Everything else is mediocre. So measure that stuff. Make it a factor in your decision making. And I know that a lot of people that are listening to me right now, before I turn it over to you, Jason, they're thinking, aside from that, whoa, Josh talks fast and he's freaking like OCD, is like, and that's true, is the fact that I'm not giving you a magic bullet in this conversation, because there is none. I wish there was, but you know what? That's why sales is not easy. It's not, it's like sales is hard, and it's hard to hire the right people. So there is no magic bullet. I'm giving you tactics and strategies and mindsets that you can use in your business or in your department. So just remember, like, I wish I could give you magic bullets for every person, like in every way of doing things, but it would just change. If I told you something, it would change in a couple of weeks or a couple of months or a couple of years. There is no set thing that I see that's like, it's always going to be this or that. So measure everything that's important to your organization and to doing the job well. And I can give some examples later when we talk, but I want to give it back to Jason so I don't go too far off. He's got to keep me steered in the right direction.
You're doing great, dude. That's my job. So yeah, am I correct in thinking that we may have talked about this before, that there's a mindset of don't look for ways to disqualify the person during the interview. Look for ways that they like you might be able to dig in and be a little more curious about what
Yep.
might make them a good fit. Is that kind of the thinking here? And I know it can be really hard, especially when you're dealing with dozens or hundreds of candidates, because you're looking for quick reasons to like put someone off to the side and disqualify them versus and that might make you a little quick, to judge someone without like digging in. Am I kind of correct in that thinking or philosophy behind it?
Yeah, like so just to clarify the question, like you're asking like what are we looking for in the mindset, or what was trying to summarize the question?
Yeah, so my bad. So as a person that is hiring, is the mindset more around looking for ways that this person might be a good fit versus looking for ways to disqualify them? Because there's
Yeah.
two very different ways to approach.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for okay. Yeah, that's a good point. All right. So if you look at my T-shirt for that to answer that question, it says clarity over closing. All right, clarity over closing. That's a slogan we have at Prehired, and it's because we believe in giving clarity over closing a person. We believe in giving clarity to someone over closing that someone. Now, this is what that means is it's a different mindset, because if the arrow was reversed, AB coffees for closers, ABCs always be closing, right? Like that's the old mindset of sales. And Josh Braun, who like I've seen him, I've read something on LinkedIn. I love the way he phrased this, and it stuck with me. The moment I've ever read what he posted, I still remember this to this day, and I use this all the time. Is that people smell that commission breath? I love the way he said that. Josh Braun says that a couple of times. But commission breath, people can smell that selfishness, right? People can smell the desperation too. So that's why this thing says greater than. Clarity is greater than closing, because here's the mindset behind this. If you truly care about giving someone clarity, you care about helping that person and serving that person greater than you do collecting a check at the end of the day. And people will always gravitate to people that build them up, help them, and care for them. Like human beings naturally gravitate towards people where they know they're cared for, they know that people look out for them, and there's trust there. So the way you can do that is show the person and the person you're even interviewing, because and here's the thing, there's a balance. You can't give your time. Sales managers, again, you're thinking, Josh, like, God, I can't believe you're saying this kind of stuff. I don't agree. Listen, I know your time is valuable. I know, again, you're being pulled in multiple directions, but think about this. All right, let's put that aside for a second. What if, all right, think about this. What if you had this different way of thinking that's not normal for most of the country and most of these companies that hire? And instead of saying, what can I find wrong with this person that makes them not qualified to this job, right? What are the things that are right? What are the things they're doing well that make them good in this job? And also, how can I help make them better through my one-time interaction? Whether they move on to the next next role or next stage in the interview process, what's something that because you're a manager, there's a certain level of experience that you have and wisdom you could probably give to someone else. Take the time to show that you care by looking for the things they do well, not for the things that they do poorly, to disqualify them. And then also, even if you are going to disqualify them because you realize, all right, this is not a fit for us, give them some feedback. to leave a positive impression of your company so they know it's like, hey, you did well in these areas, but these are the areas that we really think you may struggle with. I know you may disagree with that, but I just want to leave you with some feedback because I know it's so hard to sometimes get feedback when you're interviewing. Put yourself in their shoes, be empathetic. As sales leaders, that's our job. Think about, so we do this in the field, we do this when we're in our jobs. Do this with your own people before they become your people. I'm telling you, this mindset, this way of thinking will transform your life at work and the people around you, and it will gradually change your overall way of doing things because essentially you're shifting this thing inside of your head and your mind that I've got to hit quota. I've got to make sure performance happens. And we get wrapped up. It's easy to get wrapped in hitting our numbers and making sure that thing happens. But if you can stay on task with goals and then build people up and choose to give them clarity, choose to give them support and help and understanding when you didn't have to, your career is just going to keep going up. I'm just going to say this right now. Anyone, whether you're an SDR, whether you're a VP of sales in this conversation, if you take on that mindset, that's tough to implement in day-to-day life because you get caught up and your time is valuable. You will literally have no wall ceiling that you can't break through because of that mindset. Everyone loves it. And also stay humble though. Like that's one other thing too. I gotta say is stay humble and look for humility in the people you're interviewing because what you're looking for, like this is like me talking. Yeah, I know it sounds confident, I'm trying to get through a lot of words in a very short time. That's why I'm talking fast. But confidence, don't over mistake the confidence for like arrogance. There's a lot of people that can have confidence and humility at the same time, and look for that humility. And more importantly, I'm going to say this, look for coachability. Let's leave it at that. Like this is one thing I was going to get to eventually. That is one of the most important factors that I look for. So here's one thing you can take away is like, you could easily implement. Look at ways to see, is that applicant coachable? Coachability is probably the most important factor in a hiring process. And before I turn it back over to Jason, I'm going to say this. I already know some of you are going to say things like, yeah, but what about these traits? And I'd love for you to post them. That's fine. Like, what about these things? But think about this as you begin to post. These are the other things that may be more important. All those other things are things that can be coached. If they don't have those things that you might type and say, well, what if they don't have this? See if they are coachable in order to get the thing that you want. That is the key to hiring great salespeople. And here's the thing about this though. You have to care to do that, right? To coach someone who's not a part of your team and to see how they respond, that requires you to care and take extra time to do that more than you would, but you'll lead to finding the best hires. So, yeah.
Yeah, the coachability part is huge. And Amanda just commented on that too in the chat. You know, one of her best interviews was someone that asked her for feedback at the end of a role play, you know, in an interview. So let's get to Amanda's question actually. Um, what are your thoughts on role plays, like kind of simulating aspects of the job? Where does
Mhm.
that play a part during the interview process?
So I love it. I think it has to be there. And I actually am surprised when I still find companies that actually don't thoroughly actually do role practices or role plays, like whatever you're going to call it, walkthroughs of the job. Because like if you were to apply for an engineering role at another company, if you're going to be a coder or something, develop an app, especially if you're an engineer, you're going to have like, they're going to have problems and math problems and things you have to do to prove you're at a certain level. Why wouldn't
Yeah.
you do that for sales? And so some companies still don't do
Yeah.
what we're actually talking about. Is like they do it very light, like just show me what you can do. And it's like, all right, okay. And then it is what it is. Like, it's kind of like that was the interview for that part. So I think that this actually could be one of the more important parts of the interview. And maybe I haven't made a decision about this, Jason, but this is the thing I've been thinking about is like maybe this should be moved closer to the front of the interview practice of like as soon as you kind of get the basics about the person in that phone interview, maybe even the person. Well, no, you need a sales manager to do that. You can't really have an HR manager screen someone out for that. So, but early on in the process, I think it would be nice for you to do the role practices. And here's why. Before they answer all these other questions about like what's your greatest strength and weakness, and like tell me about a time of yada yada yada. That's good. That's good to hear. But let's do some role practices first, because here's what's gonna happen. I don't even care if they're horrible at it. I'm gonna say, okay, that was really bad. Like, or that was okay. Like, because here's the thing. Think about this again. Empathy. If they're doing this role practice, they're nervous, and the way to make them not nervous or to make them trust you Be real, genuine, and vulnerable, like I'm doing right now. A lot of you probably maybe are like, man, I like this Josh guy, I like the stuff he's saying. It's because I'm being real with you. I am who I am off camera and on camera. So when you're with someone, treat them like a human being. And if they did bad, tell them they did bad and tell them what was bad. Now, this, if you're not if you don't know what you're doing, that you can't do this. So make sure the right person interviewing them can do this thing. But if you do a role practice with them for a cold call, for a qualification, like section of a call, or like a disco call, like whatever you're going to test them on, make sure you're measuring and taking notes of what they did well, what they did, what did they do well, what did they do bad, maybe what they forgot, what did they leave out, like make notes of that, and then say, okay, overall, good, average, or bad. Like tell them how they did, and say, but that's okay. Let's try this again. Here's my feedback. And then give them your feedback. Say, whenever you said that, try this next time. And then also this, try this next time, this next time, this next. All right. Any questions? Great. Let's try this one more time. Go back, do it again. That right there is the biggest indicator of success. I want to see how well they can take like the stuff I just gave them and then implement it. And managers, listen to me on this. Forget the company, forget all that other stuff that they have requirements for. You and I both know you like people who hit their quota and they're easy to manage. They don't fight you on things that you tell them to do or recommendations, but with humility, they take your coaching, they actually do it, and then they improve. If that person shows that in that call and doesn't get dejected, ruffled, angry at you for giving that feedback and being real with them, you've got someone who's got the right mindset, the right attitudes, and coachability.
Yep.
All that other stuff can be trained. And just as a side note, if we don't get to it, I'm going to go ahead and say that a part of the mindset, like a symptom of a good mindset for sales and a healthy mindset, is curiosity. I had to bring that up because I do look for curiosity a lot in the sales process, and we may not actually get to talk about that much, but I wanted to say that to everyone, is that does play a really good role. People that are curious, because to be curious, you have to actually care about something. So to be curious, you have to show an interest in something, which means you do care on some level. So that again stems from an attitude and mindset, that if you switch that, and I would just say some of the things I'm saying now, when I've said this to other salespeople, like I've had dozens of people in conversations that said, wow, when I got that, a light bulb went off and my conversations went, like my sales just went up. Like my career has been transformed from just this one way of thinking. So if you get anything from this, like think about that. That could change your career.
Yeah, dude, I love this, man. And let's just kind of keep on a roll with some of the questions that people are asking. We may not get to all of them, you guys,
Yep.
but I'm going to try to get to as many as I can. I'm hearing a lot of people ask about like remote hiring and all this other stuff. And one specific question I have, because this is something I've dealt with clients, is how do you test someone's ability to be able to work independently from home when, if it wasn't COVID, they would be coming into a sales floor where there are, you know, I think it's much easier to manage as a sales manager when everyone's there, in one place, and you can see what everyone's doing. How do you test for the person's ability to work independently at home, and what that might be like in this new, kind of inside sales era that we're in?
Believe it or not, this one is actually easier than the other stuff we talked about.
Cool.
Interview them like they'll be on the job. In other words, if it's going to be remote, if they're going to be working remote, you should never have them come in office for like any part of the qualifying interview. They may, if you want them in person to sign something or whatever, I get that, but you can still use like digital, like signing like apps. There are tons of them out there. We all use them. But my point is, like, interview them remotely, like interview them via phone call, via Zoom, or via some other platform, and treat them just like you would have to treat or manage or train someone like you've already doing remotely. And if that will work, it's going to work. Like give them assignments, like maybe give, like you can't make them like do free work for the company. That's crazy. But if you're concerned about the remote work part of it, give them an assignment, like a small assignment that you might give a sales rep or an SDR to do, and then see if they come back to you. And if you have feedback again for them on that, give it to them and see if they actually come back and like see that exchange. Like, how is that going to be? And the reason, and again, like this is easy to answer, but also is going to be relative to the company and the abilities of that sales management. If you don't have the ability to really, if you're uncomfortable managing people remotely just because you're not face to face, because like that's something you're just gonna have to work on, because everything rises and falls with leadership. Like that's a saying that I've heard over and over. So you just need to remember, like whoever is in the leadership positions, that will allow or disallow things in the company. So if your company does not have the ability, or the managers don't have the ability to manage someone remotely, that's just something they have to choose. Do we want to work on it or not? They have to actively admit, like, this is where we're good, this is where we need to improve, and be measuring the things that they're good at and not, and say, do we want to actually get good at managing people remotely or not? Do we believe that the effects of COVID are going to change the world as we know it, and there's going to be more remote competition? Do we believe that these things are going to be like a part of like life going forward? Because if so, should we get really good at managing people remotely? And if you already are, then this is not an issue. Just interview them like they are. Like give them things that you like. Interact with them just like you would with someone who's working for you, because that then the transition doesn't really change. But take a assessment of yourself and your company's abilities and see, can we do that? If not, decide, is it worth changing if you can't, if you can't manage them well remotely.
Got it. Yeah, that's I think a really big one because I do see that every now and then where there are SDRs because I train these folks. Everyone's coming in from their home, and it's very obvious that these people, based on their activity and how they manage their schedule, they have a really hard time keeping organized and
Mhm.
staying disciplined with their calendar when it's just them working by themselves at home. So a lot of people were asking about that, and we got time for like one more short question. So Steven asked, how many people will you typically interview before you select a person? I know this is going to range, Josh, but like how many people typically, or a range of some sort, might people think about to know like, hey, I've interviewed enough. Like I just need to make a hiring decision at this point, or do you even think about it like that?
That's a good question, and it does have a range because every company is going to, if you've only got one role available, I think it's unrealistic to like try to interview like 50 people. Right? Like that's kind of like that's a lot of your time, because there's always a balance between like your time and money, and like like we got to make a decision, and also we got to make a decision to move on. So you can't keep waiting for like the one, right? Because in my mind, like I don't believe that exists. Like for any relationship, really. Like I mean, I think you make decisions that are good or bad, and like so. In other words, I think it's going to be a decision that every company makes on their own, deciding like, do we want to interview 3, 5, or 10? Um, I personally, I'm just thinking about this because I don't really dictate how other companies do this. But I would say that like I don't want to give a number because like it's so different. I'd love to give a number, but I'm just like, let's just say that like, yeah, I would say that per position, if you're interviewing um more here, let's just say this. If you're interviewing, as I think about this, more than 30 to 40 people for one role, you definitely have a marketing problem.
Yeah.
Your messaging you have for this job posting, like, is way out of alignment with what you're, who the people you're talking to. So you definitely probably could do a better job on the front end of your funnel for this position you're trying to fill. In a perfect world, I think that maybe you'll only have to interview like 5 to 10, like per role. If we keep, but again, not every company can do that well and have a process that gets them there, because now we're talking about operational stuff and marketing. Like so, without getting into how to build a company up that and make it better from every department, um, keep interviewing until you have the right person, and just make sure you don't sell for someone that you can't do the job, or you've got you've got concerns about. Because if you've already got concerns about someone you're interviewing them, you definitely are, it's not, probably not going to go away. I've learned that, and unless you can figure out in the interview process, oh, they overcome it, I'm okay about it. But if you already like, don't keep on interviewing, don't make it, because that costs time and money to make a bad hire. That's the one thing that is probably, yeah, worse than just not hiring anyone else, is making the wrong hire. I've done that a couple of times.
Yeah. Dude, this has been great. Tons of value here. And we'll send out the replay to you guys afterwards. But we're out of time. I appreciate everyone's participation and stuff here. Josh, tell us more about Prehired, where we can go to connect with you. A couple people are asking also, will you open up candidates outside of the US? If you could address that too. And I'll drop a link in here too. If
Yeah.
you guys want to use Prehired, make sure to check out that link. But what do you guys do, Josh? And let us know how people can connect with you.
Yeah, Prehired helps essentially right now, like people in America transition from lower class to middle class to upper class through our membership community, and we focus on tech sales. It takes about 12 weeks to get our people into the program and then out into jobs. And I would say that, and we have a mission to get 10,000 people helped in this process by 2025. So if anyone has a chance, not a manager, and they're looking to get help to get into break into the tech scene, you can go to the website and you can actually apply, see if we can help you. We'll tell you again, we'll clarify like, can we help you? Can we not? What are you good at? What do you need to work on? On the other side, though, if you're a manager and you're like, I'd like to maybe look at some candidates that you have that fit this criteria that we're talking about, I would say go to the website prehired.io/hire, and you'll meet with our partnership team, and they'll go over a list of questions with you about like what your company's doing, and then they'll see if you can help you or not, and they explain to you how we work with partners and whether or not we have a fit for you or not. But they'll also clarify some of your processes and like talk about how we would work with you so that we know that it's a good fit going into it. So yeah, like anyone that's interested, talk to us because we'll just try to help you. If we can't, that's fine. But if we can, that's awesome too.
Yeah, these guys are really great. I can't stress enough too. Several of our clients use Prehired, and they've been pretty happy with the hires. So make sure to check it out. If you guys are looking for some really great BDR, SDR candidates, make sure to go to prehired.io/hire, which I dropped in the comments. But Josh, dude, thanks for spending an hour with us today, and everyone, thanks for the participation and everything. And we good to go.
Yeah, man.
Take care,
I love
everyone.
this stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, participation was great. Have a good afternoon, everyone. Good rest of your week, all that good stuff. And I'll get an email out to you later today with a replay. All right, everyone. See ya. Later.
Later.